Hi, my name is Cassidy Yard, and I'm going to be discussing the motivations behind suicide terrorism, specifically a comparison of Robert Black's paper, The Geometry of Terrorism, and Robert Pape's Strategic Logic of Suicide Terrorism. So, starting off with a general definition, what is suicide terrorism? As defined by the Foreign Policy Research Institute, suicide terrorism is a violent attack designed to kill others where the death of the attacker is a necessary part of the action. In recent decades, we've seen a drastic spike in suicide terrorism incidents, sparking further discussion and research on the motivations behind such attacks. Starting off with Robert Pape's paper, The Strategic Logic of Suicide Terrorism, um, Pape views suicide terrorism as a rational, coercive military technique with the goal of ending foreign occupation or political control of a territory. Um, and this goal is kind of the basis of his theory that there is a specific end goal here, and that it is often, as you can see in the table on the right, to coerce other countries out of their territory. This is most likely to be used against wealthy democratic nations because it appeals to a sense of morality and utilizes shock factor as part of their strategy. And developed democratic nations are far more likely to be receptive to this as opposed to other nations under, say, a dictatorship. It's also most likely to be used by a smaller, weaker military force against an elite military or a stronger presence. Um, Oftentimes, these smaller forces are vastly outnumbered and overpowered by their foreign occupants. So, this is kind of a last resort and a more efficient option than just fighting back militarily. Moving on to Donald Black's paper, The Geometry of Terrorism, he sees suicide terrorism as a moralistic form of self help. Like Pape's theory, this is also executed by weaker groups towards stronger groups with a high social and cultural distance. But rather than having a specific end goal, this is mainly expressive and it's used to enact justice and moralistic punishment. The attacker feels morally wronged but has little access to legitimate legal means or any other form of retaliation. So the suicide terrorism in this theory is an expression, an airing of a grievance, or an expression of a moral wrongdoing. There are a lot of similarities between these two theories, and they share a lot of common ideas. Both Pape and Black agree on the distances required for suicide terrorism to occur, both mentioning high social, cultural, and relational distance. And both theories suggest the act expresses a grievance the acting individual or group has with a larger, more powerful group. Both Pape and Black suggest that the act of suicide terrorism has recognizable patterns, giving both of their theories the power of predictability and explanatory power. The main differences in these theories is that Black suggests that suicide terrorism is based on structure rather than goals, where Pape claims the exact opposite, that it is based on goals rather than structure. Pape's theory also outlines a specific tangible objective, removing foreign occupation, to be obtained by the terroristic act, while Black views it to be simply an airing of grievances. So while both of these theories acknowledge that there is an alleged wrongdoing that is being acknowledged by those committing the act, um, Pape states that there is a tangible end goal. This is an act of political strategy, where Black is just stating that it is an expression of those grievances. And Black uses the structural pure sociology paradigm to explain terrorist actions, while Pape focuses on rational choice and strategies in political science. Moving on to a real world comparison, probably one of the most infamous examples of a suicide terrorist attack is the September 11th attacks on the World Trade Center in New York City in 2001. Now, we can use both of these theories to analyze this attack. Some much needed context is that 9/11 did occur after the Gulf War and large amounts of US forces in the Middle East. So both of these theories would acknowledge that there is a grievance by groups like Al Qaeda being angry about non Muslim forces in these Islamic countries. So they would both agree on that aspect that there is a a feeling of being wronged here generally. But if we analyze this purely using Black's theory, we would just see it as Al Qaeda expressing fundamental disagreement or feelings of being wronged with no particular political goal, purely using this as an expression of moralistic punishment for wrongdoings. And if we used Pape's theory, we would look at it through the lens of this attack was meant to pressure US forces to move their forces out of the Middle East. Again, post Gulf War, lots of presence in countries like Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran. So that would be the end goal of this attack if we were to utilize Pape's theory. With predictability, explanatory power, both of these theories demonstrate predictability as well as explanatory power. The difference between them is that while they can both be useful for analyzing these situations, Black's theory may not provide an all encompassing explanation because it ignores political and military strategy. When we're looking at Black's theory, he's using the idea of pure sociology, which takes out psychology and any irrational behavior. But it also ignores the possibility of the suicide terrorism being enacted for a specific purpose other than airing grievances. Pape's theory might be a little more useful in these situations because we need that often context for these historical events and for these wartime acts. That this was obviously a political move. There was a purpose here other than just expressing a grievance or wrongdoing, and obviously led to greater military conflicts after that. So a lot of situations like 9/11 might require a little bit more of a rational element that Pape's theory provides. So while both of these theories we can look back and predict certain situations and we can use them to explain events historically, Pape's theory might be a little bit more useful when we're talking more in the political science sphere about military strategy.